Welcome to the 12th episode of The Media's Input. I am your host, James A. Paxson. To check out this interview and previous interviews, go to the YouTube channel, James Paxson. On episode 11, I interviewed the play-by-play broadcaster for the Sudbury Wolves in the Ontario Hockey League, Mr. Mike Karafalidis. Today, I interview a very good old friend of mine. We used to work at the Schoolcraft Connection 5-6 years ago at Schoolcraft College, and now she is a producer at WAND 17. Miss Lizzie Casella, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, dealing with the coronavirus, but it's a lot better since the weather is better. When it started in March, it was like kind of cold, so you couldn't really go outside or take a walk or do anything. But now, since the weather is nicer, it's a lot easier to deal with the virus.
That is very true. And I mean, no one wants to go out in March regardless of there being a world pandemic. So, the summer is here, the sun is shining. Most days. It's been raining here for like 3 days, but either way, you are correct. It's much better getting out and going outside.
How is Decatur, Illinois dealing with the coronavirus?
Decatur, Illinois is dealing with it in very interesting ways. We had one of the longest lockdowns in Illinois of the entire country. And then we just actually entered on Friday our phase 4, which means bars and restaurants could open with 50% capacity inside. Gyms could reopen with a limited capacity. Pools can start to open. All the parks are open again. Like everything's going back to normal as much as they can. So that's exciting and new and fun. So, I think even though a lot of people are still angry or have their own personal feelings about it, we've surprisingly had very good reactions to people wearing masks when they go out and being respectful. It was a hard adjustment for, I think, Decatur and Central Illinois, but people are adapting.
How hard was it to find news during the coronavirus that wasn't virus related working at a TV station?
Almost impossible. I mean, we basically had the COVID-19 show all day long, every day. It was incredibly hard, even when we have, our national affiliates that we can pull from. Even that stuff was all, coronavirus.
Yeah, that's basically what the news was for a while. And now it seems like stuff is starting to come back a little bit with like sports and some other stuff going on. But mainly it was, from what I saw, virus related and what movie you could watch online or on your phone, not at the theaters.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much so my show has like consumer segment, so it was very much like, here's all the virus related stuff, here's some other health related stories that aren't necessarily the virus stuff, that whatever were here and there, and then here's everything that's closing or going bankrupt because of this, also virus related and very sad. And then it was like, here is a zoo that's letting their animals go walk through these museums while they're closed, or here's a drive-by party for someone that we were trying to make it not virus related, but it had to be because that's all that was out there. We had a very clear shift, I think, in the past couple of weeks that made it where our shows weren't so virus related anymore. And now we do mention it, but not nearly as much in news, like you said, with sports starting and like everything going on nationally, the climate that way. It was like a very hard, COVID's over, quote unquote, even though it's not. Here's new news now. And like, it was a whole new world of like, things are going back to normal. Here's all these new topics we can finally talk about again.
Was it hard to go back to those topics, or was it like a relief that you could finally stop doing the COVID show?
I think it was both, honestly. I think it was hard because we had all had to adjust to a new writing style with COVID, and then we very quickly had to turn back. Even a lot of our crime stories, our crime was down for a very long time. So we didn't even have the basic, car accidents or shootings, and as sad as those are part of everyday life, and we report on them every day. So trying to start writing those articles again and knowing how to write, a normal political segment was it was a big adjustment again. It was kind of like, oh, let me go look at old scripts so I remember how to do this and kind of reteach myself so that I don't sound insensitive or like I'm not getting the information wrong. But it was a big relief. I mean, it was great to not just be writing the same stories over and over again every single show in a different way, because there's only so many ways you can say COVID-19, coronavirus, pandemic, all those keywords without it getting old very quickly.
Was there a way to display information that wasn't just fear and scary? Or talking about a pandemic, everything came across as you should be scared or you should be cautious?
Um, I think there absolutely was a way to come across by not being, fear driven or having it be scary. It is a very scary time, and I think when we first started, it was scary, but every single day our governor here did a press conference. Um, which got old after a while because after a while there was no new information to give, but he was committed to giving us updates. So every single day we, got to take something positive from what he said or from what health officials were saying, to kind of put a spin on it. And like every step of the way we've said, you need to go outside and wear masks to be cautious, but there were ways that we could portray what the community was doing to make it not seem so scary by having those drive-by parades for the graduation parties or birthday parties, stuff like that kind of was a way to shine a light that made it not so scary. Or, the local community started doing online workout classes and started doing, give back donations that would drive by at the church so that you could, if you needed help. And the community kind of very much came together here. And that was a way to portray this information in not such a scary way. And I think it was just all the way you presented the numbers. Yeah, we have these massively high numbers of thousands of people are getting sick a day, or are testing positive a day, and hundreds are dying. But at the same time, if you start telling them, our ICU rate started going down, our death rate started going down, and you present that facts to them, it's not as scary. You know, it just, in the beginning, yes, it was all scary, doom and gloom, but that was the reality of it. And unfortunately, we had to do the reality of it. But by the end, and when things started to turn around, you just have to be good about making that prominent. And I think that's the way to make it not so scary. And the words you use. It's all about those keywords you use to your viewers.
Overall, how did you think the governor of Illinois handled the virus?
I think he handled it as best he could. I think he did very, very well. I think, there were areas that he could have improved, especially when it came to nursing homes. But I think no one knew how bad this virus was until we were in the middle of it. So I think Illinois handled it great because we listened to the health advisors mostly, and that's who he relied on. And he did a very good job at getting the things we needed in the state quicker than most states were.
So talk to me a little bit on like some of your educational and professional history on how you got to here.
So in high school, I guess let me go back even farther. Since I was like 5 years old, I wanted to be a journalist. I thought I wanted to be on the Today Show, an anchor, like that's all I wanted to do. All through kind of middle school, high school, I did a lot of extra writing projects. My teachers were great about, helping me kind of nourish that writing. Um, in high school, I took photography classes, video editing classes, all that. I was in a special program at our high school that was called Global Ed that combined social studies, history, and like economics, all those types of classes with our writing classes, so that we had a very global background of politics, trade. I mean, even, United Nation delegations. I was in the UN all 4 years, not in the UN, but in the UN club all 4 years. I did stuff like that. My dad was a wedding photographer, so growing up, he trained me from a very young age of how to be on both sides of the camera, and always would help me with my projects and stuff like that, which was great. And then college, I started with the newspaper. I got an internship there as a senior in high school because I applied and interviewed and got to be in my internship program for the whole year, which eventually helped me become the managing editor. I was like trying to think for a second. It's been so long since newspaper. But the managing editor for a whole semester at Schoolcraft Connection after being a staff writer there for a year and a half, and then I eventually got to do, managing editor for a whole year and worked very closely with the editor in chief. And eventually, it basically was we were both editor in chief. There really wasn't separate positions because we had a very close partnership on how we wanted to run the paper and where we would go. Then I went to Wayne State for 2 years to study broadcast journalism, which is where I figured out I wanted to be a producer. I did a lot of film, all the classes there because all my gen eds were out of the way. And that's how I got to do Metro Arts, which is a entertainment and arts focused show in Detroit. It's filmed at Wayne State. It's run by Wayne State students. It's all done out of Wayne State's studio, but it is aired on Detroit Public Television, and it's a professional show. We just don't get paid for it, but we get really, really great experience. I was a producer on that for the first half of the season and got to do 4 segments on that show, which was great, as well as helping my other producers all along the show, loaning cameras, loaning teleprompter, all of the behind the scenes stuff you have to know. And then, out of the blue, I just had to build my connections. I wasn't finding jobs. I have a background in PR because I did PR and social media management for my internships in college. And just through my connections in global ed and reaching out to other journalists and through Facebook, I joined a Facebook page. I posted that I was looking for jobs, and my assistant news director commented and said, "Hey, message me." And so I messaged her. 2 days later, I was on the phone with her with an interview. And a week after that, the day after Christmas, I drove down here, but I was down here and had an interview and was offered a job. It was just very quick, and it was very authentic of knowing my stuff from all of the stuff I've done my whole life and knowing what to do, I guess. But yeah, through newspaper, through all these, even my PR jobs and social media, and through, I think, Metro Arts mostly, that's how I got to be a news producer here.
How important is it that you were very well-rounded, that you weren't just a very good writer, you had a photography background, a writing background, a film background, an editing background? How important was it for you to be very well-rounded?
I think for me personally, it was everything. I think for my actual job description, it is a step up, I think, definitely, to be well-rounded, because I can understand when I'm writing a story. I mean, writing is most important because that's the focus of my job, but understanding how they're going to go film this, how to talk to my photographers about what I would like to see, how to think in my head how to make these graphics, or if I have a story that I only have photos and not video, how I can incorporate those in a creative way. So I think it really is everything in this job to be well-rounded, because it gives you so many more opportunities, and it helps you be so much more flexible to really work with your photographers, your other producers, your anchors, your reporters, to have a well-rounded newscast. So it's not, you saying I need this and them having a different message and you guys not being able to communicate or meet on common ground.
Who were some of your biggest news inspirations growing up?
I was obsessed with Katie Couric, Meredith Vieira. I loved them. I watched them every day on the Today Show. They were amazing. And then even just locally, I watched Local 4 every morning. I grew up with Rhonda Walker and getting to see her and all that. So that was awesome to see all these really powerful women. And then, not just women. I loved Anderson Cooper. I really enjoyed his work on all of the different things he's done. Gosh, we even would watch, he was on Dateline sometimes and doing those types of shows. So getting to watch the different diverse things that he did was really, really cool. And I think those were my biggest kind of influences. And then as I got older and got into college, I expanded all of the famous news names that you have to read papers about and stuff like that, learning about Brian Williams, even though he's not the greatest. I wouldn't say he's someone that I looked up to, but I think there's a lot to learn from his career path as well. So even some people who are shamed, you could say, or their careers ended very poorly, were some of the people I looked up to because they had great careers, and it's something to learn from.
What do you think are some challenges that women have in this business that men necessarily don't?
I think the biggest challenge for women is that they're seen as pretty. They're seen as, we want to put you on air because you're pretty, and if you don't have a certain look, we don't want you. And I think we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves on and off the camera. I mean, a lot of comments I've gotten about women not being able to carry their own equipment, or them not being able to get sent out on shoots by themselves because they don't think they're smart enough to use the camera or the editing system on their own, which is just not true. I think it's really sad when a woman has to carry all of her equipment by herself just to prove a point, and has to say no to someone helping her because the way that they asked, or the connotation behind it. And I think the biggest challenge is the pay gap, that everyone has. It's that glass ceiling that women have to break at every single career they go to. And it's, the pay raise, it's how we're treated in the office. If you get a little snippy, sometimes, people think it's that time of month and they want to take you seriously. So I think finding a line of being very serious and professional, but also getting to be yourself, um, is the most difficult part.
What are some of the most important things you've learned since being a part of Channel 17?
Adaptability is the number one key. I mean, my third day in, I had a show, which they originally told me it would probably be about 2 months of training. By the third day, we had a plane crash, and I was boothing the show. I was writing half of it. Obviously, I had my team to back me up. But then from that day on, the 4 o'clock show was my show. Then we had to adapt to COVID. We had to adapt to, rioting and protesting and all of these other things, and like warehouse shootings that we just covered last week, and being able to have this breaking news at a moment's notice, and not being comfortable with, oh, my show's perfectly laid out by 11 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what I want it to be. You have to adapt to whatever is going to be going on. And still, I mean, learning how to write, learning how to improve and ask questions. I think one of the biggest thing was I was very scared that if I asked questions, I would look stupid. Whereas me asking questions, no matter how stupid they might have been, really might not have been that stupid. I didn't know the system that we used when we came in. I didn't know the editing system. I knew nothing, because it was nothing I had had experience with. Um, and I think learning how to adjust quickly. I mean, I said adaptability, but even learning how to write quicker, how to, go out on your own to kind of learn. The first couple of weeks would study scripts, and they didn't ask me to do that, but I wanted to learn how to write better. So I'd study scripts. I got a book. I did all these things that I felt would help me in the long run, and would ask them what they did so I could learn from their learning experiences as well. And I think those are very important, and not thinking you know everything when you go in. Every station's different, every environment's different. Every time we hire a new person, it changes. And you've got to be open to that. It's news. It changes every single day. It changes every single minute sometimes. And that's why adaptability is the most important thing.
What is the craziest story you've been a part of in your last 5 months at the station?
Oh God. So it was very sad and unfortunate, but at the same time crazy, because we were investigating COVID-19 at an outbreak at a senior center here. And as we were investigating all of these COVID cases, and unfortunately some of these people dying, and the family members calling of us saying they weren't allowed to visit, all these things, we uncovered a lot of other things that were going on, like the fact that they weren't wearing PPE properly before the pandemic. They weren't treating their care people right before the pandemic. They were stealing money from residents, and they weren't abiding by all of these state laws that they were supposed to be abiding by. And we just went in to report about COVID. We didn't think we were going to uncover all of these other crazy, crazy things. And then on top of that, while all that's going on at the nursing home, we were having a lot of fires that weren't being able to be put out because we found out a bunch of the fire hydrants here don't work. So we were trying to investigate why. So we not only have, this massive COVID outbreak at senior centers, and we're investigating that senior center, and, eventually we'll do more and more stories about that and take that to court. But now, we have these fire hydrants and all these fires happening, and we're trying to find out why all these fires happening and why do they have to call in so many fire units to help when there's a fire hydrant right there. And it was because none of them worked. And it just, all of these issues that we kind of uncovered in the middle of COVID that had nothing to do with COVID has been mind-blowing, and it was crazy that it took COVID to bring that out more than anything.
Well, I think also it kind of shows how important local news is, because a station in Chicago or the national NBC affiliate is not going to uncover stuff like that. It has to be local news and people who live in that community to find all that stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. And community is everything. A lot of the community gives us these tips. It's, these families calling us at the nursing home saying, this is what's happening. We have security camera footage to prove it. And, it's us calling the fire department saying, why did you need 5 engine trucks to put this out? And then them having to come up with an answer, and then us investigating. Okay, let's go look at the records. We have time. I mean, we don't really have the time, but we have people that we can donate time to do this, to look through all these records and dig. Whereas, people wouldn't think that too. And it takes our community plus local news stations even thinking about stuff like that in cities, because not a lot of people think about that in cities because they're too busy focusing on national news or, regional issues that are solved in days or weeks because of legislative stuff, whereas these are issues that are very prevalent now and people want to know about.
As a producer, what's some of the most important things you're looking out of your anchors?
I think one of the most important things I, look for in anchors is them being able to help me write when I really need it, especially in breaking news situations, and being able to handle what I throw at them. I mean, it's as simple as me having them want to be at the desk and then move to a different part of the studio in the middle of the show. I need to know that they can walk and read and get set up at the next position, in time so that it goes on air and it's flawless and it reads well and our viewers don't even know. All of a sudden they just come back on camera in a different area, and then knowing that I can work with them and have a relationship that if they think I'm wrong, they tell me that I'm wrong, but if I think they're wrong, I can have that conversation with them as well, and it's not going to be hostile. It's like, it's something we can both learn and grow from, I think. And just being a partnership. I mean, you have to be a partnership with your anchors. You work with them every single day, almost all day long, or half of your day. You have to make this work. I'm not saying I have to be best friends with them, but I have to have some sort of professional relationship and we can work together and I can trust them.
Looking at the election coming up in November, how do you think the coronavirus has changed that?
I mean, the fact that they've canceled primaries in states because we were in the middle of a shutdown and they couldn't have people going out. And then, the major pushes that have been made for mail-in voting, absentee ballots that people weren't so focused on before. I think that's been a huge change and a great push because it gives access to, a lot of the lower income population that may not be able to make it out to vote, which I think is great. And just the actual push to get more people registered and involved in new ways through social media, even like putting posters at grocery stores and local stores that you wouldn't think because there's no other way to communicate. And I think focusing on those lower incomes and getting to them has been one of the biggest outcomes of that. And I think finding ways to adapt. I mean, Biden is going online every day, doing Zoom calls for his town halls and stuff because they can't campaign the same way that they did. And I think that brings our generation into it a lot more than we did before. It brings in people who might not be able to leave work to go to a campaign rally can then go online and watch these things later, which has been huge. I think it gives more accessibility to the campaign. I think it makes the actual candidates a little bit more accessible because they have to rely on social media now. And I think it will help overall get the importance of voting, the importance of these elections and everything out there more because people are actually paying attention and putting more of an effort into those things because they want to see change.
Do you think that there's going to be a big number of voters who are going to vote strictly because they either liked how the president handled the virus or didn't like how the president handled the virus and want someone different in there?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people our age have definitely, or younger, the younger generation is going to be able to vote for maybe the first time in this election, um, or probably the first time in this election. And I think they are the voices that are getting out there. They're the ones driving protests for Black Lives Matter. They're the ones trying to see policy change. And I think they'll definitely vote regardless of which side they're on. And I think they will help to drive our parents, their cousins, the older generation out there, or at least help them find ways, if it's helping them fill out a mail-in ballot, if it's helping them absentee ballot because they can't make it, or a lot of places do early voting where you can go to the city clerk's office. And I think they're the ones pushing that drive, um, and there will be more voters regardless of what people think, just because people are frustrated of what's been going on. And it's a way that I think they feel on a local, a state, and even a national level that they feel that they can be heard when so much has been at stake for so many months.
Looking at yourself now in a perfect world, where do you think your future will end up?
Um, I hope it ends up back in Detroit. Um, Realistically, I would love to work for a Detroit network for a couple of years, and then I would hope to make enough money that I could retire early. And rather than going and teaching, I want to work for nonprofits as their media marketing and helping them as best as I could with the knowledge, since I do have video and social media and all these other skills, helping them to put their message out, or ending up at Frontline, or something like Frontline. I am very interested in these very long term investigations and reporting that take years of dedication to build these long, 1-2 hour segments that can make real change over a course of several years. And that's where I hope the drive goes once I've become very seasoned and, older in this area that I'm in now as a TV producer.
What are some of or your favorite like frontline or long investigative series that you've seen?
I was very interested in the investigation that they did into Syria refugees when they left and went to Turkey and London and all these surrounding countries, even trying to come into the U.S., and how they were treated, how some of them were granted asylum and then it was taken away, and how the investigations into um, the ICE facilities in the U.S. and how they actually are treating immigrants, how they're actually treating these people who aren't citizens but are trying to become citizens. And the investigations where they go down to Mexico and follow these children running without their parents or anything else because they're scared of gang violence and don't want to become a part of these gangs, and would risk going to a whole different country and never being with their family again just to do that. And I think it's so interesting seeing all of these different aspects of life that I never ever would experience. I'm never going to experience having that, hopefully, and can't relate to. And I think the way that they have done it has become very knowledgeable, very relatable. I understand it a lot more of these issues that I didn't know existed.
How can people contact you and contact the station and follow the station on social media?
So we're WAND TV is our WANDTV.com is our website. Also on social media, we're WANDTV 17 on Facebook. Me personally, you can follow me at Lizzie Casella for my personal page, or Little But Fierce 97 is my professional page on Instagram, and then I also have my website that's littlebutfierce97.wordpress.com. I don't update it as much as I should because I'm busy at work, but I'm working on that and updating, all of my adventures that way.
Thank you very much, Lizzie. To check out this interview and other interviews, go to my YouTube channel, James Paxson. And as always, thank you to the guest, Miss Lizzie Casella.
Thank you, Jim.